Giggling laughter echoed through the coffee shop as Ethan Miles walked in. His shirt collar was worn, paint still on his hands, eyes tired but kind. In the corner sat a woman in a wheelchair, elegant dress, cold and guarded expression. Sorry, I'm the person they're about to laugh at. Friends behind them held up phones recording. Ethan set down a small gift box. If they're going to film this, at least let them see me treat you to something sweet. She froze, her eyes shifting. They didn't know that this cruel joke would open a story no one in that cafe could ever forget. Ethan was 35, a single father and house painter who delivered packages on evening shifts. After his wife passed away, he raised Sophie alone. She was 8, a bright girl who wrote notes saying, "Smile, Daddy," and stuck them on mirrors. His hands bore the marks of honest work, calloused palms, fingernails, with permanent traces of paint that wouldn't scrub out no matter how hard he tried. These were the hands that tucked Sophie in at night, that fixed her cereal in the morning, that held her when she cried for a mother she was slowly forgetting. A coworker had played a cruel joke, signing him up for a free blind date without telling him. Sophie had overheard, innocent and hopeful, "Try it, Dad. Maybe someone will actually like you." That evening, he only had $15 left, but he still bought a small box of cupcakes to give to this stranger. The cafe was upscale, soft laughter mixing with piano music. Ethan felt out of place among the suits and evening gowns. His work boots scuffed against the polished floor, making a sound that seemed to announce his presence as someone who didn't belong. He'd washed his hands 3 times before coming, but paint still clung to his knuckles, a blue that matched the sky he'd painted on a customer's ceiling that morning. In the corner sat Clara Wynn, 32, in a wheelchair. Beautiful face, sad eyes. When he sat down, she immediately tensed. "I'm also here to be laughed at, apparently." They liked pairing two pathetic people together. Ethan smiled gently, noticing the group of people with phones pointed at them from across the room. He recognized his co-worker among them, nudging another man, both snickering. "If they're recording, at least let them see you being treated like you deserve." She went silent for several seconds, then smiled, a real smile for the first time in months. Around them, the group of so-called friends whispered and snickered, phones pointed, elbows nudging. "This is going to be hilarious," one muttered. But Ethan ignored them. He opened the cupcake box and offered it to Clara. "I know this isn't much, but my daughter helped me pick them out." She stared at the cupcakes, simple, store-bought, nothing fancy, but no one had given her anything in months without pity in their eyes. "Your daughter sounds wonderful. She's the best thing that ever happened to me." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of Sophie grinning, missing a front tooth, holding a paintbrush. "She helps you work sometimes. Mostly she just makes me laugh when things get hard." He paused, watching as Clara ran her finger around the edge of the cupcake box, as if trying to decide whether to take one. "What about you? Do you have family?" Clara's expression hardened, her fingers gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. "I did, before the accident, before I became this broken, incomplete burden." Ethan shook his head, leaning forward slightly. "You're not broken. You're just different. And different isn't less." She looked at him sharply, searching for the pity she always saw, the careful tone people use, the way they talked too loud or too slow, like her legs didn't work, so her brain must not either. But his eyes were just steady, honest, kind. "Why did you come tonight?" "My daughter asked me to try, and I can't say no to her." He smiled, a small lift at the corner of his mouth. "Why did you—" "Because I'm tired of hiding, and I thought maybe—" She trailed off. "I don't know what I thought." They talked for an hour about nothing important, favorite foods, bad movies, the weather, normal conversation, like she was just a person, not a disability, not a tragedy, just Clara. When the cafe started closing, they stood to leave. While he stood, she wheeled. The group of friends was still there, disappointed. Their prank hadn't produced more drama. Ethan turned to them, his voice calm but firm. "I hope whatever you got out of tonight was worth it, because she just gave me the best evening I've had in 2 years." Clara's eyes filled with tears. Outside, under the streetlights, she said softly, "You're the first person who looked at me without pity. Then everyone else is blind." She laughed, a real surprised laugh. "Can we do this again? Without the cameras? I'd like that." As he walked away, Clara sat in her wheelchair, watching him disappear into the night. For the first time since the accident, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could be seen as whole again. At home, Sophie was waiting up, drawing at the kitchen table. "How was it, Dad?" It was good, baby. Really good. Did she like the cupcakes? She loved them. Sophie beamed. I knew it. People who smile in their eyes always like cupcakes. Ethan hugged his daughter, grateful for her wisdom. On the mirror, her note still said, Smile, Daddy. And for the first time in a long time, he did. The next morning, Clara sent a text message. I owe you a coffee. One without cameras. From that day on, they met every week. No pity, no performance, just two lonely people sharing space. Ethan told her about his wife's death, the nights juggling work and childcare, the fear that he wasn't enough for Sophie. Clara listened, her eyes softening with understanding. Clara told him she'd been a creative director, but after the accident left her paralyzed from the waist down, her fiancé left. He couldn't handle having a wife who couldn't walk beside him, she said, voice breaking. Ethan simply replied, then he never deserved to walk beside you in the first place. Clara laughed, surprised, moved. The laugh reached her eyes. They fell into a rhythm. Coffee on Tuesdays, phone calls on Thursdays, text messages throughout the week that made both of them smile at their phones like teenagers. Ethan learned that Clara had a sharp sense of humor, that she loved terrible puns, that she cried during commercials, but never during sad movies. Clara learned that Ethan sang off-key while painting, that he made pancakes in funny shapes for Sophie, that he'd been writing letters to his late wife in a journal he kept hidden. Do you still write to her? Clara asked one day, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Sometimes, less now than before. He looked at her, a heaviness in his gaze. I think she'd be okay with that. What would you tell her if you could? He was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his hands. That I'm trying, that Sophie is amazing, that I met someone who makes me want to try harder. Clara's breath caught. That night, Ethan sat at his desk, journal open, pen in hand. The house was quiet, Sophie asleep. He stared at the last entry, dated 3 weeks earlier. Sarah, I miss you every day. But something's changing. I met someone. I don't know what it means yet. Would you be angry? Would you understand Sophie likes her? She says Clara makes me smile again. Is that betraying you? I don't know how to do this. He closed the journal without adding anything new, and dreamed of Sarah turning away when he reached for her hand. In the morning, his phone rang. Sarah's mother, her voice sharp. It's too soon, Ethan. Sophie needs stability, not confusion. And that poor woman, what can you offer her? You can barely keep your own life together. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. I'm doing my best, Patricia. I have to move forward for Sophie's sake as much as mine. Sarah's been gone barely 2 years, and not a day goes by that I don't think of her. But I can't live in that grief forever. Sophie deserves more than a father who's half alive. After hanging up, he stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Sophie's note still stuck in the corner. Smile, Daddy. He wiped away a tear, then forced his lips to curve upward. For Sophie. Always for Sophie. One Saturday, Ethan brought Sophie to meet Clara. The little girl ran up, no hesitation, no fear, just pure 8-year-old energy. You're Miss Clara. Dad talks about you all the time, does he? Clara smiled, glancing at Ethan, who suddenly found the ground very interesting. Uh-huh. He says you're really smart and funny and pretty. Sophie pulled out a handmade card. I made this for you. Clara opened it. Inside, in wobbly crayon letters, for the lady who makes Dad smile. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Sophie into a hug. Thank you, sweetheart. It's been a long time since anyone was this honest with me. They spent the afternoon together. Sophie showed Clara her drawings. Clara taught Sophie about different art styles. Ethan watched them, something warm and terrifying, growing in his chest. This felt like family, but he was scared. Scared of replacing the memory of his wife. Scared of Clara's trauma. Scared of messing it all up. That evening, after Sophie fell asleep in the car, Clara and Ethan sat in the parking lot. She's wonderful, Clara said. She likes you a lot. I like her too. Clara looked at him. And I like you, which terrifies me. Why? Because everyone who's ever claimed to like me has left. My fiancé, my business partners, my friends. Her voice cracked. What happens when you see how hard this is? When you realize I can't just get up and go places? When you get tired of waiting? Ethan reached over, took her hand. I spent 2 years watching my wife die slowly. Waiting with her, taking care of her. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat, because that's what love is. He squeezed her fingers. Being with you isn't waiting. It's choosing. Every day. Clara broke down crying real ugly, crying the kind she hadn't allowed herself since the accident. Ethan just held her hand and then let her cry. The following week, Sophie drew a picture at school. Her teacher asked about it. "That's my family," Sophie explained, pointing. "That's Dad, that's me, and that's Miss Clara." "Is Miss Clara your mom?" the teacher asked. Sophie thought about it seriously. "Not yet, but I think she wants to be." When Ethan picked her up, the teacher showed him the drawing. His throat tightened. At home, Sophie taped it to the refrigerator with a note. "She's part of our team now." That night, Ethan called Clara. "Sophie drew us as a family today." Silence on the other end. Then, "What did you say?" "I didn't know what to say. I wanted to ask you first. Is that okay? Is it okay that my daughter is already thinking of you that way?" "Ethan." Her voice was thick with emotion. "I've been thinking of her, of both of you that way for weeks now. Yeah. Yeah." They sat on the phone in comfortable silence, both smiling in their separate spaces. "Can I tell you something?" Clara said quietly. "Anything. Before I met you, I thought my life was over, that the accident had taken everything that mattered. But you and Sophie, you make me feel like maybe I can still have a life worth living. Clara, you always had a life worth living. You just needed someone to remind you." She laughed softly. "Will you keep reminding me every single day?" The next time they met, Clara had something for them, a small wooden frame with Sophie's drawing inside. "I want you to have this back," she said, "but I also want to earn the right to be in it. For real." Ethan smiled. "You already have." Sophie, who had been coloring nearby, looked up. "Does this mean Miss Clara is staying?" Clara wheeled over, knelt well, leaned to Sophie's level as much as she could. "If you'll have me, sweetheart, I'd like to stay." Sophie launched herself into Clara's arms. "Finally, I've been waiting forever." Over Sophie's shoulder, Clara met Ethan's eyes. He mouthed, "Me too." Sophie writes, "She's part of our team now," and tapes it to the fridge. As weeks passed, Ethan noticed Clara never spoke much about her work. She mentioned design projects, clients with specific needs, but nothing about the scale of her business. He assumed she ran a small studio, maybe with a partner or two. He never pressed her. Work was her business, just as his painting and deliveries were his. 1 month later, Ethan got a delivery job at Winnicum, an upscale furniture design company. When he stepped into the conference room to drop off supplies, he froze. Clara, the woman he'd been seeing sitting at the head of a massive table surrounded by lawyers and investors. She was the CEO. Their eyes met. She looked momentarily happy, then composed herself. "You're right on time." Ethan couldn't speak. He'd known she worked in design, but this she'd never mentioned, being the owner of a multi-million-dollar company. Before he could process, the door opened. A man in an expensive suit walked in with a lawyer and PR representative. Lucas, Brennan, Clara's ex-fiancé. His shoes alone probably cost more than Ethan made in a week. His watch glinted gold and heavy. Everything about him spoke of money and power, things Ethan had never had. "Clara, so good to see you." His smile was predatory. "I see you've been busy. The video from your little blind date has been quite popular online." Ethan's stomach dropped. The cafe, the prank, someone had posted it. Lucas slid a folder across the table. "Here's my proposal. You agree to partner on my development project. I'll hold a press conference at explaining the video was just a misunderstanding. Refuse and I'll tell everyone you've been having an affair with your delivery guy. Infidelity scandal. Your company's reputation destroyed." Clara gripped her wheelchair armrest, voice shaking. "You leaked that video to humiliate me." Lucas shrugged. "You've gotten smarter." One of the investors coughed uncomfortably. "Mrs. Wynn, perhaps we should consider no." Her voice was steel. Ethan stepped forward. "She doesn't owe you her freedom." Lucas laughed coldly. "Mind your own business, painter. This is between me and my ex-fiancée. It stopped being just your business when you tried to blackmail her. I'm offering her a solution. Take care of your daughter and stay out of matters you don't understand." Clara took a deep breath, wheeled herself closer to the table, pulled out a document, and signed it in front of everyone. "This is my official rejection of your partnership. I'd rather lose contracts than sell my integrity." Lucas smiled cruelly. "Without investor support, without a network, with everyone throwing stones at you, how far do you think you'll get?" She looked him dead in the eye. "I still have myself, and that's more than you ever had." His smile faltered. He gathered his things, dropping the engagement ring box and luxury car keys on the table as he left. You'll regret this. After he was gone, the investors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Miss Wynne, we need to discuss the implications. The implications are simple, Clara said calmly. I choose my dignity over your investment. If that's a problem, there's the door. 3 investors left. 2 stayed looking uncertain. The room cleared until only Ethan and Clara remained. Why didn't you tell me, he asked quietly, about being a CEO? Because every time I tell people, they treat me differently. Either they want something from me or they pity me more because I fell so far. She looked away. With you, I was just Clara. Not CEO Clara, not wheelchair Clara, just me. You should have trusted me. I know, I'm sorry, her voice broke. But I'm not sorry for what I just did. I'm not selling who I am for his approval. Ethan knelt in front of her wheelchair, picked up the engagement ring box from the table, placed it in her hand. You don't need to forget him. You just need to know you don't belong to him anymore. She opened her hand. The ring fell to the floor with a small clink. Light reflected off it as it rolled away, disappearing under the table. I don't want it, she whispered. Any of it. The ring, the cars, the life he promised. I just want to be free. Then you are. She looked at him, tears streaming. What if he destroys my company? What if the video ruins everything? What if then we start over? Together. He squeezed her hands. You think I fell for you because of your company? I fell for you because you made my daughter laugh. Because you see the world in colors I forgot existed. Because you're brave, even when you were terrified. I'm so scared, Ethan. I know, but you don't have to be scared alone anymore. That evening, Lucas held his press conference. He showed the video, told his version of the story, painting Clara as desperate, Ethan as opportunistic. The internet erupted. Comments poured in, half sympathetic, half vicious. Of course she's with a delivery guy. She can't get anyone better now. Gold digger found a new target. This is sad on both sides. At home, Ethan held Sophie while she cried. Why are people being mean about Miss Clara because they don't know her? They only know the story someone else told. But we know the real story. Yes, we do. Sophie looked up at him, fierce despite her tears. Then we should tell them the real story. How, I don't know. But Miss Clara is part of our family now. And families protect each other. That night, Ethan sat at his desk, again journal open. He stared at the photo of Sarah he kept beside it, her smile frozen in time. I need to know if this is okay, he whispered to the empty room. I need to know I'm not betraying you. The house creaked in the silence. No answer came. There never would be an answer, not the kind he wanted. He touched the photo, tracing Sarah's face. I think I'm falling in love again. I didn't think that was possible. Is that allowed? Is there room in my heart for both of you? No answer. Just the ticking of the clock. His phone buzzed with a text from Clara. I can't sleep, too much thinking. He texted back, me too. But we'll figure it out. Together. The next morning, Sophie made a video on Ethan's phone. Simple, unedited, just an 8-year-old telling the truth. My name is Sophie. Miss Clara is my friend. She's nice and she makes my dad happy. I don't care if she's in a wheelchair. I don't care if she's a CEO. I care that she reads me stories and teaches me to draw and never lies to me. And if you think she's not good enough for my dad, you're wrong. She's too good for all of you. Ethan posted it. No explanation, just Sophie's words. Within hours, it went viral, millions of views. The comments shifted. This kid gets it. Out of the mouths of babes. Maybe we should listen to the people who actually know her. Other videos emerged, employees at Winnicom defending Clara, contractors she'd worked with, people in wheelchairs thanking her for representation. The narrative shifted, and Lucas's attempt to destroy her backfired spectacularly. But for Clara, none of that mattered as much as the text she received from Sophie. We love you, Miss Clara. Don't be worried. We're a team, she cried, reading it. But this time, they were tears of relief. Clara opened her hand, let the ring fall to the floor. Light reflected off it, closing that chapter. Clara lost investors. Her shares were frozen. The board called emergency meetings. But she didn't give up. Ethan took time off from deliveries. Together, they opened a small workshop called Second Bloom, furniture designed for people with disabilities. Sophie painted the sign that hung in front, "This is our new home." The early days were hard. They built by hand, sold piece by piece, took custom orders from people who'd never had furniture that fit their needs. Clara practiced walking with a support frame, not because she had to, but because she wanted to trim on. Ethan never pushed her, just worked beside her quietly. One evening, Clara sat slumped over design sketches, exhausted. Maybe Lucas was right. Maybe I can't do this. Ethan set down a cup of tea beside her. We don't have to go far. We just have to go together. She looked up at him, eyes wet. How are you so patient with me? Because you're worth the patience. After 6 months, a magazine featured them. Former CEO rebuilds from failure. They were invited to a conference on accessible design. Clara sat in the audience, lights on her hands, trembling, but voice steady. Thank you to the people who didn't leave when I couldn't stand. Ethan and Sophie watched from the front row, smiling. Clara had truly come back to life. But it wasn't the company's success that mattered most to Clara. It was the small moments, Sophie doing homework at the workshop table while Clara worked on designs. Ethan singing off-key while sanding wood. The three of them eating takeout on the floor because they hadn't bought proper chairs yet. Is this what family feels like? Clara asked one night after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch. I think so, Ethan said. Messy and imperfect and exactly right. She wheeled closer to him. I need to tell you something. Okay. Before the accident, I had my whole life planned. Perfect timeline, perfect milestones, perfect everything. She paused. Losing my legs felt like losing all of that. But meeting you, meeting Sophie, I realized those plans were never really mine. They were what I thought I should want. And now I want this. Workshop dust, terrible takeout, a daughter who leaves art supplies everywhere. You. She smiled. This messy, unplanned, beautiful life. Ethan kissed her softly. I want that too. Sophie, who they thought was asleep, cracked one eye open and grinned. Clara practiced standing with her support frame each day. The doctors had told her she might regain some function with intensive therapy, but she'd likely never walk normally again. That didn't stop her. She'd fall, swear, get back up. Ethan never hovered, never tried to catch her unless she asked. He understood her need to do this herself. Ethan's own struggle was quieter. Each night he still wrote in his journal to Sarah. The entries grew shorter, but he couldn't bring himself to stop completely. It felt like the last thread connecting them. One night, Clara found him at his desk, journal open. I don't mind, you know, she said softly, that you still talk to her. She's part of who I am, who Sophie is. I know I'd never ask you to forget her. I'm afraid someday Sophie will. Clara wheeled herself fully into the room. Then we'll tell her stories, show her pictures, keep Sarah alive in the ways that matter. Ethan looked up, tears in his eyes. You'd do that, of course I would. Loving someone means loving all of them, even the parts that belong to someone else. This was when Ethan knew, really knew, that what he felt for Clara was love. Not the same love he had had for Sarah. Something different. Something that had grown in the broken places, like flowers pushing through cracks in concrete. The workshop grew slowly but steadily. They hired 2 employees, both people with disabilities, who struggled to find work elsewhere. Maria, who was deaf, handled communications and social media. James, who had cerebral palsy, managed the books with brilliant precision. We're not a charity, Clara always said. We're a business that sees talent others overlook. One day a large order came in. A hospital wanted accessible furniture for their entire pediatric wing. It was more than they could handle alone. They'd need to expand, hire more people, take on debt. Clara sat with the proposal, terrified. What if we fail? What if I'm not ready for this? Ethan sat beside her, then we fail together, and we try again. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. He squeezed her hand. I believe in you. Sophie believes in you. When are you going to believe in yourself? She stared at the proposal for a long time, then signed it. Okay, let's do this. They expanded the workshop, became a small factory. Second Bloom grew into something bigger than any of them had imagined, but they kept the original sign Sophie had painted, hung it in the new space as a reminder of where they'd started. One evening, Clara showed Sophie and Ethan a small silver bracelet engraved on it, Hope begins small. This is for you, she said, giving it to Sophie, because you reminded me that small things can grow into big things. Sophie hugged her tight. Does this mean you're staying forever? Clara looked at Ethan over Sophie's head. He nodded. Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying forever. That night after Sophie was in bed, Clara practiced walking with her frame across the workshop floor. Ethan watched, not helping unless she asked. She made it 15 feet, then 20, then collapsed, laughing and crying into his arms. I did it. You did it. I'm not fixed. I'll probably never be what I was before. Good, because what you are now is pretty amazing. She kissed him, tasting salt from happy tears. Outside through the window, the second Bloom sign glowed under the streetlight. Sophie's painted letters, "This is our new home." And for the first time since the accident, Clara truly believed it. Home wasn't a place. It was these people, this moment, this choice to keep choosing each other every single day. A week later, Ethan drove to the apartment Clara still kept but rarely used. He was helping her sort through things she wanted to bring to the house they now shared. In her bedroom, he found a box of photographs Clara before the accident. Standing on a beach, hiking on a mountain trail, dancing at a gala. You look happy, he said, showing her one of the photos. I thought I was. She took the photo, studied it. But I was always chasing the next thing, the next achievement. I never just was. Not like now. You're happier now. Even with everything. She looked around at the boxes, at the wheelchair she sat in, at Ethan kneeling beside her. I'm real now. That's better than happy. Ethan began gathering her clothes from the closet. At the back, he found a garment bag. Inside was a wedding dress, elegant, simple, never worn. I bought it a week before the accident, Claire explained, seeing him discover it. Lucas and I were supposed to get married 3 months later. Ethan carefully zipped the bag back up. What do you want to do with it? I don't know. It feels wrong to keep it. Wrong to get rid of it, too. He sat beside her on the bed. Sometimes things don't have easy answers. Sometimes we just carry them with us until we know. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I think that's the wisest thing anyone's ever said to me. They brought the dress back with them, stored it in the attic. Not to keep, not to throw away, just to carry until they knew. One morning, as Ethan was helping a customer load a custom desk into their van, his phone rang. Patricia, Sarah's mother. He almost didn't answer, but something told him he should. Sophie's school called us. Patricia said, her voice tight. You weren't answering. She's in the hospital. She fell during recess. Ethan's world stopped. 20 minutes later, he burst into the emergency room, Clara right behind him. Sophie lay in a bed, her arm in a cast, face pale but smiling when she saw them. Dad, Miss Clara, look, they gave me a blue cast. It matches your paint. Clara wheeled to one side of the bed, Ethan to the other. Both reached for her at the same time, their hands meeting over Sophie's small body. We got here as fast as we could, Ethan said, voice thick. I wasn't scared, Sophie assured them. I knew you'd come. In the corner stood Patricia and Robert, Sarah's parents. Their faces were tight with disapproval, seeing Clara there, but they'd come when called for Sophie. Clara noticed them, began to wheel back. I should give you family time. Sophie grabbed her hand. You are family. Patricia stepped forward, mouth opening to object, but something in Sophie's face stopped her. This child, her granddaughter, looking at Clara with such trust, such love. How could she fight that? Thank you for coming so quickly, Patricia said stiffly to Clara. It's good to see someone cares for her so deeply. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning, a small crack in the wall of resistance. As they all sat in the hospital room, awkward, but united in their concern for Sophie, Ethan realized something important. Families weren't built in grand moments. They were built in hospital rooms, in shared fears, in small surrenders of pride. That's when the doctor came in with the x-rays and their attention returned to Sophie. The workshop continued to grow. With the hospital contract completed ahead of schedule, more orders flowed in. They hired more employees, veterans with PTSD, single mothers, people who'd been overlooked or underestimated. Second Bloom became known not just for its furniture, but for its mission. Clara's former investors began calling, wanting back in now that success was apparent. She politely declined. They'd built this themselves, brick by brick, failure by failure, triumph by triumph. She wouldn't share it with those who hadn't believed. Lucas appeared in business magazines announcing new ventures, new partnerships. Occasionally, reporters would ask Clara for comment on her rivalry with her ex. She always gave the same answer, I'm not in competition with anyone but myself. One evening as they locked up the workshop, Clara noticed Ethan staring at the signs Sophie had painted, now hanging in their conference room. What are you thinking about? She asked. How close we came to never meeting. If my coworker hadn't played that stupid prank, if I hadn't decided to stop hiding, if Sophie hadn't pushed me to go, they smiled at each other, recognizing the strange alchemy of chance and choice that had brought them together. Do you believe in fate? Clara asked. I believe in second chances, Ethan answered, and recognizing them when they come. That night, they sat on the porch swing watching the stars. Ethan felt Clara's head heavy on his shoulder, her breathing deep and even. Asleep. He sat very still, not wanting to wake her. Inside, Sophie was doing homework, the light from her room falling across the yard. His family, not the one he'd planned, but the one he'd found, or maybe the one that had found him. He thought of Sarah. The pain of losing her had changed, transformed into something he could carry without being crushed by it. She would always be part of him, part of Sophie. But now there was room for more. Room for Clara. Room for this new life they were building together. In his pocket was a small box with a ring not as expensive as the one Lucas had given her but chosen with care. He'd ask her soon. Not tonight, but soon, when the moment was right. For now he was content to sit in the quiet, Clara breathing beside him, the distant sound of Sophie humming as she worked, and the knowledge that sometimes the best things grow from the hardest breaks. The next morning, Ethan dropped Sophie at school, then headed to the workshop to finish a special project, a display for an upcoming accessible design showcase. Clara was already there on the phone with a supplier, her free hand sketching modifications to a design. She waved as he entered, pointing to the coffee she'd made him. This had become their rhythm, as natural as breathing. After hanging up, Clara wheeled over to see his progress. It's looking good. The showcase could bring in a lot of new business. Ethan nodded, sanding the edge of a table designed for wheelchair users. Are you nervous about presenting Paul? A little. I haven't done a public speaking event since before the accident. Ethan set down his sandpaper, turned to face her fully. You're going to be amazing, just like you are at everything else. She smiled, but he could see the doubt in her eyes. I keep thinking Lucas might be there. He's on the speaker list too. And if he is, then I'll hold my head high and show him exactly what he walked away from. Ethan grinned. That's my girl. He froze, the words hanging between them. My girl. He hadn't meant to say it, hadn't planned it, but there it was. Clara's eyes widened slightly, then softened. Yes, she said quietly, I am. Later that day, a customer came in, a mother with a teenage son who had severe cerebral palsy. The boy was confined to a specialized wheelchair, unable to use standard furniture. They had visited 4 other furniture stores before finding Second Bloom. No one else even tried to understand what we needed, the mother explained. They just showed catalog pages and said, special orders take 6 months. Clara wheeled herself around the showroom with the family, showing them options, asking detailed questions about the boy's specific needs and preferences. She spoke directly to him, not just his mother watching for his eye movements in slight nods to understand his responses. When they left an hour later, having placed an order for a custom desk and shelving unit, the mother hugged Clara. You have no idea what it means to be seen, really seen. After they'd gone, Ethan found Clara wiping away tears. You okay? She nodded. That's why we're doing this. Not to prove Lucas wrong, not to make money, but because everyone deserves to have a space that fits them, not the other way around. Ethan squeezed her shoulder. I learned something from you every day. You know that? As closing time approached, Ethan received a call from Sophie's teacher. She was staying late for an art project and needed to be picked up in an hour. Clara insisted he go, saying she'd lock up the workshop. After Ethan left, Clara remained at her desk, going through invoices. The workshop was quiet except for the hum of the heating system and the occasional ping of cooling metal in the fabrication area. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear the door open. Still working late, I see. She looked up, startled. Lucas stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed, as always, an expression of mild amusement on his face. What are you doing here? Reconnaissance. I wanted to see this operation for myself. He walked around the workshop, examining the pieces in progress, running his hand over surfaces, inspecting joints with a critical eye. Not bad for a charity case. We're not a charity. Clara's voice was steady, but her hands gripped the wheels of her chair tightly. Come on, Clara. You and I both know what this is. A feel-good story. Disabled CEO starts over. Great PR, but not a real business. We're profitable, growing, making a difference. Lucas laughed a sound that used to make her heart skip, but now just made her skin crawl. I'm speaking at the showcase, you know, right before you. I know. He moved closer, leaning down so his face was level with hers. It's not too late to come back. Winnecombe misses you. I miss your insights. The double meaning wasn't lost on her. She held his gaze. I'm exactly where I need to be. With your house painter, playing small-time entrepreneur. This isn't you, Clara. You never knew me. Not really. She wheeled backward, putting distance between them. I'd like you to leave now. We're closed. Lucas straightened, adjusted his cuffs. Think about my offer. The showcase could be your comeback or your final fade into irrelevance. Your choice. After he left, Clara sat in the silent workshop shaking. Not with fear, but with anger and something else. Certainty. She'd made the right choice walking away from Lucas, from Winnecombe, from the life she'd thought she wanted. When Ethan returned with Sophie, he found Clara at the work table sketching furiously. New design. She looked up, her eyes bright with purpose. For the showcase. Something no one's ever seen before. That night after Sophie was asleep, Clara told Ethan about Lucas's visit. His jaw tightened, but he remained calm. What do you want to do? Beat him, not just at the showcase, at everything. Show him that success isn't measured by the size of your company, but by the lives you change. Ethan smiled. I love when you get fired up. She raised an eyebrow. Only then. He leaned in, kissed her softly. No, pretty much all the time. As the showcase approached, the entire workshop buzzed with energy. Everyone contributed ideas for their display, which had evolved into an interactive exhibit demonstrating how thoughtful design could change lives. They worked late into the night, perfecting every detail. The morning of the showcase, Ethan found Clara in their bedroom, staring at herself in the mirror. She'd chosen a sleek business suit, her hair pulled back in a professional updo. She looked every inch the CEO she'd once been, except for the wheelchair. You look beautiful, he said. She met his eyes in the mirror. I'm terrified. What if I freeze? What if people just see the chair? Ethan stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders. Then they'll be missing the best part. She reached up, covered his hand with hers. I couldn't do this without you. Yes, you could, but I'm glad you don't have to. They arrived at the convention center early to set up their exhibit. Second Bloom had a prime spot thanks to the buzz generated by Sophie's video and the hospital contract. As they worked, Clara noticed Lucas across the floor, supervising his team, setting up an elaborate display for his company, Brennan Designs. Nervous Maria asked, seeing Clara watch Lucas. Clara shook her head. No. For the first time in a long time, I know exactly who I am and what I'm doing. The showcase opened with a keynote address about the importance of universal design. Clara sat in the audience, Ethan beside her, listening intently. When Lucas took the stage for his presentation, he was smooth polished, his slides showcasing luxury furniture with accessible elements subtly incorporated. The future of design isn't about making special furniture for special needs, he said. It's about making beautiful furniture that happens to work for everyone. The audience applauded politely. It was a good line, a progressive stance. Clara had to admit he knew how to work a crowd. When it was her turn, Ethan squeezed her hand before she wheeled herself to the stage. The ramp was steep, and for a moment she struggled, her arms straining. Lucas, still at the podium, made a move as if to help her, but she shook her head slightly. She would do this herself. Reaching the stage, Clara positioned herself at the center. She didn't use the podium, it was too high for her seated position. Instead, she simply spoke, her voice clear and strong. When I had my accident 3 years ago, everyone told me what I couldn't do anymore. Couldn't walk, couldn't dance, couldn't be the person I was before. What no one told me was all the things I could still do and all the new things I would learn to do. She gestured to the Second Bloom exhibit where their team was demonstrating the furniture. At Second Bloom, we don't design furniture for disabilities. We design furniture for people. People who have been told what they can't do for far too long. We listen, we learn, and then we build. As she spoke, slides appeared behind her, not of furniture, but of people. Their customers using Second Bloom pieces in their homes, schools, workplaces. Real people with real lives who happen to have different abilities. Design isn't about making things beautiful, though beauty matters. It's about making things work for actual human beings with all their complexities and differences. When we get that right, the beauty follows naturally. The audience was silent, captivated. Even Lucas watched with an unreadable expression. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. Today, I'm just getting started. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the things that break us open are the very things that let the light in. The applause was immediate and thunderous. Clara sat tall in her chair, a smile spreading across her face. Across the room, Ethan beamed with pride, mouthing 3 words she could read even at a distance. I love you. After the presentations, their exhibit was swamped with visitors. Designers, manufacturers, potential clients all wanted to see Second Bloom's innovations up close. Clara was in her element, explaining their philosophy, demonstrating features, connecting with people who understood exactly what they were trying to accomplish. Lucas approached as the crowd thinned, his expression carefully neutral. Impressive presentation. Thank you. He glanced around at their exhibit, then back at her. You found your niche. It's not a niche, Lucas. It's a mission. He nodded slowly. I see that now. For a moment, she glimpsed something in his eyes, regret perhaps, or simply recognition of what he'd lost. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual confidence. We should talk sometime about potential collaboration. Clara smiled politely. My card is on the table. Have your people call mine. It was a dismissal, and they both knew it. Lucas walked away, back straight, head high. Clara watched him go, feeling nothing but a mild curiosity about the person she'd once thought she would marry. He seemed so small now, so limited by his own vision of success. Ethan appeared at her side, a glass of champagne in hand. To the star of the show. She took the glass, clinked it against his. To Second Bloom, and second chances. As they moved through the showcase, accepting congratulations and making connections, Clara felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. Not the weightless euphoria of success, but something more grounded, the certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. That evening, they celebrated with the team at a restaurant near the convention center. Sophie, who had joined them after school, sat beside Clara, proudly wearing her Hope Begins Small bracelet. James proposed a toast to Clara and Ethan, who taught us all that broken doesn't mean finished. Clara raised her glass, her eyes meeting Ethan's across the table. In that moment, surrounded by their chosen family, she knew that whatever challenges came next, they would face them together. Not as CEO and painter, not as disabled and able-bodied, but simply as two people who had found each other when they needed it most. Later, as Ethan drove them home, Sophie asleep in the back seat, Clara reached for his hand. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met that night? Ethan squeezed her fingers. I try not to think about it. Some alternate realities are too dark to imagine. She looked out the window at the city lights blurring past. I used to think everything happened for a reason. The accident, Lucas leaving all of it, some grand design leading me somewhere. Now I think life just happens, and it's what we do with it that matters. Ethan nodded, his eyes on the road. Sarah used to say something similar, that we don't get to choose what happens to us, but we always get to choose how we respond. Clara smiled, watching his profile in the dim light. She sounds like she was very wise. She was. You would have liked her. I think I would have too. They drove in comfortable silence the rest of the way home, hand in hand, the future unwritten but full of possibility. Lucas slid the folder across the gleaming conference table, his manicured fingernails lingering on its edge. My proposal. You agree to partner on my development project? I'll hold a press conference explaining the video was just a misunderstanding. Refuse and I'll tell everyone you've been having an affair with your delivery guy. Infidelity scandal. Your company's reputation destroyed. Clara's knuckles whitened as she gripped her wheelchair's armrests, her voice barely containing a tremor. You leaked that video to humiliate me. Lucas shrugged, his designer suit shifting perfectly with the motion. You've gotten smarter. One of the investors coughed uncomfortably, eyes darting between Clara and Lucas. Mrs. When perhaps we should consider no. The word hung in the air like steel. Ethan stepped forward from where he'd been frozen near the doorway, his work boots scuffing against the polished floor. She doesn't owe you her freedom. Lucas laughed, the sound cold and empty. Mind your own business, painter. This is between me and my ex-fiancée. It stopped being just your business when you tried to blackmail her. Lucas's eyes narrowed, taking in Ethan's paint-stained hands, his worn clothes, the delivery package still tucked under his arm. I'm offering her a solution. Take care of your daughter and stay out of matters you don't understand. Clara took a deep breath, her chest rising with resolve. She wheeled herself closer to the table, pulled out a document, and signed it in front of everyone. This is my official rejection of your partnership. I'd rather lose contracts than sell my integrity. Lucas's smile turned predatory, revealing perfect white teeth. Without investor support, without a network with everyone throwing stones at you, how far do you think you'll get? She looked him dead in the eye, her voice level and calm. I still have myself, and that's more than you ever had. His smile faltered. He gathered his things, dropping the engagement ring box and luxury car keys on the table as he left. You'll regret this. After he was gone, the investors exchanged uncomfortable glances, the tension in the room almost visible. Miss Wynn, we need to discuss the implications. The implications are simple. Clara's voice remained steady. I choose my dignity over your investment. If that's a problem, there's the door. 3 investors left, their expressions a mixture of disappointment and reluctant respect. 2 stayed looking uncertain. The room cleared until only Ethan and Clara remained. Why didn't you tell me? Ethan's question hung between them, soft yet heavy. About being a CEO. Because every time I tell people, they treat me differently. Either they want something from me, or they pity me more because I fell so far. Her eyes dropped to her lap. With you, I was just Clara. Not CEO Clara, not wheelchair Clara, just me. You should have trusted me. I know, I'm sorry. Her voice caught. But I'm not sorry for what I just did. I'm not selling who I am for his approval. Ethan knelt in front of her wheelchair, picked up the engagement ring box from the table, placed it in her hand. You don't need to forget him. You just need to know you don't belong to him anymore. She opened her hand. The ring fell to the floor with a small clink. Light reflected off it as it rolled away, disappearing under the table. I don't want it, any of it. The ring, the cars, the life he promised. I just want to be free. Then you are. She looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks, her carefully applied makeup creating dark rivers. What if he destroys my company? What if the video ruins everything? What if then we start over, together? He squeezed her hands, his work-roughened palms against her smooth ones. You think I fell for you because of your company? I fell for you because you made my daughter laugh. Because you see the world in colors I forgot existed. Because you're brave even when you're terrified. I'm so scared, Ethan. I know. But you don't have to be scared alone anymore. That evening, Lucas held his press conference. The hotel ballroom was packed with business reporters and social media influencers, all eager for the story. Lucas stood at the podium, his expression grave with practiced concern. He showed the video, told his version of the story, painting Clara as desperate, Ethan as opportunistic. The internet erupted within hours. Comments poured in, half sympathetic, half vicious. Of course she's with delivery guy, she can't get anyone better now. Gold digger found a new target. This is sad on both sides. At home, Ethan held Sophie while she cried, her small body shaking with indignation. Why are people being mean about Miss Clara? Because they don't know her. They only know the story someone else told. But we know the real story. Yes, we do. Sophie looked up at him, fierce despite her tears, her chin jutting forward in determination. Then we should tell them the real story. How, I don't know. But Miss Clara is part of our family now. And families protect each other. The next morning, Sophie made a video on Ethan's phone. Simple, unedited, just an 8-year-old telling the truth, her missing front tooth visible as she spoke with conviction beyond her years. My name is Sophie. Miss Clara is my friend. She's nice and she makes my dad happy. I don't care if she's in a wheelchair. I don't care if she's a CEO. I care that she reads me stories and teaches me to draw and never lies to me. And if you think she's not good enough for my dad, you're wrong. She's too good for all of you. Ethan posted it without explanation. Just Sophie's words. Within hours, it went viral, millions of views. The comments shifted like a tide changing direction. This kid gets it. Out of the mouths of babes. Maybe we should listen to the people who actually know her. Other videos emerged, employees at Winnicom defending Clara, contractors she'd worked with, people in wheelchairs thanking her for representation. The narrative shifted, and Lucas's attempt to destroy her backfired spectacularly. But for Clara, none of that mattered as much as the text she received from Sophie. "We love you, Miss Clara. Don't be worried, we're a team," she cried, reading it, but this time they were tears of relief. The aftermath was still devastating for Clara professionally. She lost investors. Her shares were frozen. The board called emergency meetings that dragged on for hours, voices rising behind closed doors. But she didn't give up. Ethan took time off from deliveries using his savings to help. Together, they opened a small workshop called Second Bloom, furniture designed for people with disabilities. Sophie painted the sign that hung in front, her letters wobbly but determined. "This is our new home." The early days were hard. They built by hand, sold piece by piece, took custom orders from people who'd never had furniture that fit their needs. Their first customer was a woman with rheumatoid arthritis who cried when she found a desk she could actually use without pain. Their second was a veteran missing both legs who needed a kitchen counter he could roll under. Each piece was different. Each story mattered. Clara practiced walking with a support frame not because she had to, but because she wanted to try. The doctors had told her that with her specific injury, she might regain some function with intensive therapy. Not normal walking, never that, but something. Ethan never pushed her, just worked beside her quietly there to catch her. Only when she asked. One evening, Clara sat slumped over design sketches, exhaustion evident in the curve of her spine. Maybe Lucas was right. Maybe I can't do this. Ethan set down a cup of tea beside her, the steam rising in the cool workshop air. "We don't have to go far. We just have to go together." She looked up at him, eyes wet with unshed tears. "How are you so patient with me? Because you're worth the patience." The workshop slowly began to take shape. They converted an old storage facility on the outskirts of town, its rent affordable enough for their limited budget. Ethan's painting skills transformed the drab walls into warm colors. Clara designed workstations that accommodated both standing and seated positions. Sophie contributed artwork that they hung throughout the space, bright splashes of childhood optimism. The financial strain was constant. Clara had personal savings, but much of her wealth was tied up in Winnecombe shares that were now frozen. Ethan sold his truck, keeping only the old van they needed for deliveries. They ate simple meals, counted every penny, and poured everything into making Second Bloom work. Their first big break came when a local occupational therapist visited the workshop. She was working with children with disabilities and immediately saw the potential in Clara's designs. "This is exactly what my clients need. Not institutional-looking medical furniture, but pieces that work and look good in a real home." The therapist referred several families and word began to spread. Small orders trickled in, not enough to make them profitable, but enough to keep going. Clara worked late into the night, refining designs, making each piece better than the last. Ethan watched her push herself, worried, but also filled with admiration. The Clara he'd met in the cafe had been beautiful, but guarded, wounded by life. This Clara, fighting for her new dream, refusing to be defeated, was magnificent. At night, when Sophie was asleep, they would sit together in the workshop, planning and dreaming. Clara would sketch new designs, explaining each feature, each innovation. Ethan would listen, offering practical suggestions from his experience, building and repairing things. They complemented each other in ways neither had expected. After 6 months of grueling work and financial uncertainty, a local magazine featured them, "Former CEO Rebuilds from Failure." The article was mostly positive, focusing on their mission to create furniture for people with disabilities. It mentioned the scandal, only briefly framing it as corporate politics that had ultimately led Clara to a more meaningful path. The publicity brought more customers and an invitation to a conference on accessible design. Clara was asked to speak about her experience both as a person with a disability and as a designer creating for others with different needs. The conference hall was smaller than the hotel ballroom where Lucas had held his press conference, but it was packed with people who truly cared about the topic. Clara sat at the edge of the stage, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to speak. "Thank you to the people who didn't leave when I couldn't stand." Ethan and Sophie watched from the front row, smiling encouragement. Clara spoke without notes, from the heart, about her journey from the accident through corporate success to finding purpose in Second Bloom. The audience responded with a standing ovation. Afterward, people lined up to talk to her, many in wheelchairs themselves, thanking her for her candor and vision. Clara had truly come back to life, But it wasn't the company's success that mattered most to her. It was the small moments, Sophie doing homework at the workshop table, while Clara worked on designs, Ethan singing off-key, while sanding wood, the three of them eating takeout on the floor because they hadn't bought proper chairs yet. A new kind of family forming in the spaces between work and rest. Is this what family feels like? Clara asked one night after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch in the workshop's small break area. I think so. Ethan's voice was soft in the dim light, messy and imperfect and exactly right. She wheeled closer to him, her eyes reflecting the single lamp still burning. I need to tell you something. Okay, before the accident, I had my whole life planned. Perfect timeline, perfect milestones, perfect everything. She paused, her fingers tracing patterns on the armrest of her wheelchair. Losing my legs felt like losing all of that. But meeting Sophie, I realized those plans were never really mine. They were what I thought I should want. And now I want this. Workshop dust. Terrible takeout. A daughter who leaves art supplies everywhere. You. Her smile was tentative but real. This messy, unplanned, beautiful life. Ethan kissed her softly, his hand cupping her face. I want that too. Sophie, who they thought was asleep, cracked one eye open and grinned. The workshop grew slowly but steadily. They hired 2 employees, both people with disabilities, who struggled to find work elsewhere. Maria, who was deaf, handled communications and social media with a natural talent for visual storytelling. James, who had cerebral palsy, managed the books with brilliant precision, his mind for numbers unaffected by his physical challenges. We're not a charity, Clara always said when people commented on their hiring practices. We're a business that sees talent others overlook. One day, nearly a year after they'd opened Second Bloom, a large order came in. A hospital wanted accessible furniture for their entire pediatric wing. It was more than they could handle alone. They'd need to expand, hire more people, take on debt. Clara sat with the proposal in the office they'd carved out of a corner of the workshop, her expression torn between excitement and terror. What if we fail? What if I'm not ready for this? Ethan sat beside her, his shirt dusty from sanding a table edge all afternoon. Then we fail together, and we try again. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. He squeezed her hand, calluses against soft skin. I believe in you. Sophie believes in you. When are you going to believe in yourself? She stared at the proposal for a long time, her mind racing through all the ways this could go wrong. Then, with a deep breath, she signed it. Okay, let's do this. The hospital order changed everything. They hired 3 more employees, invested in better equipment, and moved production to a larger space. The original workshop became their showroom and design studio. Through it all, they kept the original signs Sophie had painted, hung it in the new space as a reminder of where they'd started. The pediatric wing furniture was a success, leading to orders from other hospitals and rehabilitation centers. Second Bloom became known for its thoughtful, functional designs that never sacrificed aesthetics for accessibility. One evening, as they celebrated the completion of the hospital order, Clara showed Sophie and Ethan a small silver bracelet engraved with the words, "Hope begins small." "This is for you," she said, giving it to Sophie, "because you reminded me that small things can grow into big things." Sophie hugged her tight, her arms wrapping around Clara's neck. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" Clara looked at Ethan over Sophie's head. He nodded, his eyes saying everything his lips didn't need to. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying forever." That night, after Sophie was in bed, Clara practiced walking with her frame across the workshop floor. Ethan watched from his workbench, not helping unless she asked. She made it 15 feet, then 20, then collapsed, laughing and crying into his arms. "I did it. You did it. I'm not fixed. I'll probably never be what I was before." "Good, because what you are now is pretty amazing." She kissed him, tasting salt from happy tears. Outside, through the window, the Second Bloom sign glowed under the streetlight. Sophie's painted letters, a constant reminder, this is our new home. And for the first time since the accident, Clara truly believed it. Home wasn't a place. It was these people, this moment, this choice to keep choosing each other every single day. The success of Second Bloom didn't go unnoticed in the business community. 18 months after opening their doors, Clara was invited to speak at a major design conference, one that Lucas would also be attending. His company, Brennan Designs, had been growing rapidly, positioning itself as the luxury option in accessible furniture. I'm not sure I want to go, Clara confessed to Ethan as they reviewed the invitation. Seeing Lucas again, you don't have to prove anything to him, I know, but maybe I need to prove something to myself. The week before the conference, an unexpected visitor arrived at Second Bloom. Patricia Sarah's mother stood awkwardly in the showroom, her purse clutched tightly to her chest. I wasn't sure if I should come, she began, her eyes taking in the furniture displays, the photos of satisfied customers on the walls. Ethan approached her cautiously. Their relationship had been strained since he began seeing Clara Patricia's grief for her daughter, manifesting as opposition to any woman in Ethan and Sophie's lives. Is everything okay? Is Sophie? She's fine. She's the reason I'm here, actually. Patricia pulled a drawing from her purse, one of Sophie's, showing her family. Ethan, Sophie, and Clara were depicted holding hands in front of what was clearly meant to be the Second Bloom workshop. Above them, floating in the sky with angel wings, was Sarah. She brought this home from school yesterday. Said she wanted me to see her family. Ethan's throat tightened at the sight of the drawing at Sarah watching over them from heaven. Patricia continued, her voice softer than he'd heard it in years. I've been so afraid she'd forget her mother, that you'd replace her. But this, she gestured to the drawing. Sarah's still here. And this Clara person, she isn't taking Sarah's place. She's making her own. Ethan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. I'd like to meet her properly, if that's all right. When Clara wheeled into the showroom from the back office, she found Ethan and Patricia sitting together, the drawing between them. Her first instinct was to retreat to give them privacy, but Ethan looked up and beckoned her over. Clara, this is Patricia, Sarah's mother. The introduction was simple but weighted with meaning. Patricia stood, extending her hand formally. My granddaughter thinks very highly of you. Clara took her hand, her grip firm despite her nervousness. She's an exceptional child. You must be very proud. Of her? Yes, always. The conversation that followed was awkward but civil. Patricia asked pointed questions about Clara's background, her accident, her intentions toward Ethan and Sophie. Clara answered honestly, neither apologetic nor defensive. I'm not trying to replace Sarah. No one could, but I do love them both very much. Patricia nodded, her expression unreadable. Sophie needs a mother figure. And Ethan deserves happiness. Sarah would have wanted that. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a beginning. When Patricia left, she invited them to Sunday dinner, all three of them, the following weekend. A small olive branch, but significant. That night, Ethan found Clara in their bedroom, staring at herself in the mirror. What are you thinking? He asked, sitting beside her on the bed. That I have a lot to live up to. Sarah must have been remarkable. Ethan took her hand. She was. But so are you, in different ways. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. Thank you for letting me be part of your family. Thank you for helping me build a new one. The design conference arrived, bringing with it a mixture of anxiety and determination. Clara chose her outfit carefully, a tailored suit that accommodated her wheelchair while still conveying professionalism and confidence. Ethan helped her with her hair, his painter's hands surprisingly deft with the curling iron. You'll be the most beautiful woman there, he told her, as they prepared to leave for the convention center. Beauty isn't the point, but thank you. The convention center bustled with designers, manufacturers, and media. Clara's panel was scheduled for the afternoon, while Lucas would be speaking in the morning session. They arrived early to set up Second Bloom's modest booth, arranging photographs of their work and samples of their innovative hardware solutions. Clara spotted Lucas across the exhibition hall, surrounded by an entourage of assistants and admirers. His booth was 3 times the size of theirs, with sleek prototypes and a giant video screen showcasing his designs. He caught her eye and nodded slightly, his expression neutral. Ethan noticed the exchange. You okay? Fine. He's just another competitor now. But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Lucas represented the life Clara had lost, or perhaps escaped from, and his presence stirred complicated emotions. Lucas's presentation was slick and professional, his slides perfectly designed, his message carefully crafted. He spoke about invisible accessibility, luxury furniture that accommodated disabilities without looking medical or specialized. The audience responded with enthusiasm, particularly when he unveiled a line of high-end adjustable beds that could be controlled by voice or touch. When Clara's turn came, she wheeled onto the stage without assistance, positioning herself in front of the microphone. Her notes lay untouched on her lap as she surveyed the audience. 3 years ago, I had an accident that left me paralyzed from the waist down. Everyone focused on what I'd lost my mobility, my independence, my future as I'd planned it. What no one talked about was what I might gain. The room grew quiet, attention sharpening. At Second Bloom, we don't hide disabilities. We don't pretend they don't exist. We celebrate the full spectrum of human ability and design for real bodies with real needs, not as an afterthought, but as our starting point. As she spoke, images appeared on the screen behind her, not just of furniture, but of people using it. A child in a wheelchair drawing at a desk, a man with no arms cooking at a specially designed kitchen island, an elderly woman with a walker navigating a bedroom set up for her changing needs. Accessibility isn't a feature to add to standard furniture. It's a fundamental rethinking of how we interact with our environments. And when we get that right, we create spaces where everyone belongs, not despite their differences, but because of them. The applause was immediate and genuine. Clara answered questions thoughtfully, neither downplaying her disability nor making it the center of her identity. When asked about the competition with Brennan Designs, she smiled. There's room in this industry for many approaches. We each serve different needs in different markets. The important thing is that people with disabilities have more choices now than they did 5 years ago. It was gracious and professional, revealing none of the personal history between them. After the presentations, Clara found herself approached by a representative from a major retail chain interested in carrying a line of Second Bloom furniture. It would mean scaling up production significantly, reaching a much wider audience. We'd need to discuss pricing and exclusivity, but we're very interested in what you're doing, the representative explained, handing Clara her card. As they talked details, Clara noticed Lucas watching from across the room, his expression unreadable. When the retail representative left, he approached his expensive shoes silent on the carpeted floor. Congratulations. That was quite a coup. Thank you. The tension between them was palpable, years of history compressed into the small space between them. You've done well for yourself, Clara. I didn't think you would. You never really knew me, Lucas. That was always our problem, he nodded, conceding the point. Maybe not, but I know business, and what they're offering you, it's going to change everything. Be careful. I'm not afraid of change anymore. Lucas glanced past her to where Ethan stood talking with Maria at their booth. And him, your painter, is he ready for what comes next? He has a name, Ethan, and he's been ready for everything life has thrown at him so far. More than ready. Lucas raised an eyebrow, skepticism clear in his expression. If you say so, I do. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have potential clients to speak with. She wheeled away, her back straight, her head high. Lucas watched her go, something like regret flickering across his face before he turned back to his own entourage. The retail deal materialized over the following weeks, involving intense negotiations and planning. It would require Second Bloom to expand again, hire more workers, secure a manufacturing facility. The financial risk was significant, but so was the potential reward. I don't know, Ethan said one night as they reviewed the contract in their living room. This is moving so fast, too fast. Clara's question was gentle, not defensive. I just want to make sure we don't lose what makes Second Bloom special. The connection to our customers, the customization, the heart. She reached for his hand. We won't. That's non-negotiable. As they discussed the future, Sophie came in from her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. I had a bad dream that we got really rich and moved away and forgot how to be happy. Ethan pulled her onto his lap. That's not going to happen, Soph. You promise, I promise. Some things might change, but the important stuff stays the same. Sophie looked at Clara. You too. Especially me. I learned that lesson the hard way. Sophie nodded, satisfied, and allowed herself to be tucked back into bed. When Ethan returned to the living room, Clara had made her decision. We'll take the deal, but on our terms. Limited production run, quality control stays with us, and we maintain our custom workshop for special orders. Ethan smiled, relief evident in the relaxation of his shoulders. That sounds perfect. They sealed the agreement with a kiss, both aware that they stood on the edge of something new and challenging. But unlike before, Clara wasn't facing it alone. She had a partner who understood what mattered, who valued the same things she did, who wouldn't let success change what they'd built together. The next morning, Clara called the retail representative to outline their conditions. To her surprise, the company agreed readily, seeing the value in Second Bloom's authentic approach and dedicated customer base. They would start with a limited line in select stores with the potential to expand if successful. As Clara hung up the phone, she felt a curious mixture of excitement and calm. This wasn't the breathless ambition of her Winnicum days, the constant chase for bigger and more. This was measured growth rooted in purpose and value success defined on their own terms. The day the first retail shipment left their new manufacturing facility was momentous. The entire Second Bloom team gathered to watch the trucks be loaded. They'd grown to 15 employees, now most with disabilities of various kinds. Each piece of furniture was inspected personally by Clara, Laura, or Ethan before being approved for shipment. As the last truck pulled away, Clara addressed the team. Today, thousands of people will have access to furniture that truly works for them. Furniture that says you belong instead of adapt or struggle. That's because of all of you, your skill, your understanding, your commitment. She looked around at the faces of their employees, people who had often been overlooked or underestimated in previous jobs. Here they were valued not despite their differences, but because of the insights those differences brought. This is just the beginning, but let's never forget why we started. Every piece we make changes someone's daily life. That's not just business. That's purpose. The team applauded their faces, reflecting the pride they felt in their work. Ethan stood beside Clara, his hand on her shoulder, sharing in the moment. That evening, they celebrated at home with Sophie pizza and ice cream served on the kitchen table that Ethan had built himself when they first moved in together. It wasn't fancy, just solid wood with slightly uneven edges, but it had witnessed countless family dinners, homework sessions, and late-night conversations. To Second Bloom, Ethan proposed raising his glass of soda since they'd opted to celebrate with Sophie's favorite drink. To us, Sophie countered, her face serious. The business is important, but we're more important. Clara smiled at the wisdom in those words. To family, in all its forms. They clinked glasses, the simple moment somehow more meaningful than any formal celebration could have been. As Sophie chatted excitedly about her day at school, Clara caught Ethan's eye across the table. The understanding that passed between them required no words. They had built something precious here, something worth protecting as they grew. Later, after Sophie was asleep, they sat on the porch swing looking at the stars. Ethan's arm around Clara's shoulders, her head resting against him. The night was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and the rhythmic creak of the swing. Do you ever miss it? Ethan asked softly. Your old life, Clara considered the question, giving it the thought it deserved. Parts of it. The certainty, maybe, knowing exactly where I was going. But it wasn't a map someone else had drawn for me. This, she gestured, encompassed their home, their life together. This is uncharted territory. Scarier, but real. Ethan nodded, his chin brushing against her hair. I know what you mean. After Sarah died, I was so lost. No map at all, just darkness. And now I have stars to navigate by. He kissed the top of her head and they swung gently in the night, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built something neither of them could have imagined alone. The success of Second Bloom continued to grow. The retail line sold well, bringing their designs to a wider audience than they'd ever anticipated. They maintained their custom workshop, Clara still personally consulting with clients who had specific needs that weren't met by standard products. One afternoon, as Clara was working on a design for a client with a rare condition that affected his grip strength, her phone rang. The display showed a number she didn't recognize, but the area code was familiar: Winnicum's headquarters. Hello, Clara. It's Margaret from the board. Margaret had been one of the few board members who had stayed neutral during the Lucas debacle, neither supporting Clara nor actively working against her. What can I do for you, Margaret? The board wants to talk about your shares in Winnicum, about possibilities. What kind of possibilities? A merger, perhaps, or a partnership. Second Bloom's approach complements certain directions we've been considering. Clara's grip tightened on her phone. This was unexpected. Winnicum reaching out after all this time, after how things had ended. I'd have to discuss it with my partner. Of course. Take some time. But Clara, this could be good. For everyone. After hanging up, Clara sat motionless, her mind racing. A partnership with Winnicum would mean resources beyond what Second Bloom could generate on its own. Research capabilities. Global distribution. But it would also mean compromises, corporate politics, returning to a world she'd left behind. When Ethan came in from the workshop floor, he immediately sensed something had changed. "What is it Winnecombe called? They want to discuss a merger." His expression shifted, concern replacing curiosity. "And how do you feel about that?" Clara wheeled over to the window, looking out at the workshop they'd built, the employees they'd hired, the life they'd created. "I don't know. It's complicated, is it?" She turned to face him, struck by the simplicity of his question. "Maybe not as complicated as I'm making it, but it would mean changes, big ones." Ethan pulled up a chair to sit across from her, their knees almost touching. "Changes aren't always bad." "No, but I like our life. I like what we've built. I don't want to lose it." "Who says we would?" Clara smiled at the "we" in his question. "Always we, now not you or I." That was the difference between this life and her old one. She wasn't facing decisions alone anymore. "Let me think about it. Talk to a few people, of course. Whatever you decide, I'm with you." That was the thing about Ethan. He meant it. He would support her either way, not because he was passive or indecisive, but because he trusted her judgment and respected her autonomy. It was so different from Lucas's controlling nature, from the board's manipulations, from all the relationships where support came with conditions. Over the next few days, Clara spoke with industry contacts, financial advisors, and, most importantly, their employees. She wanted to understand what a merger would mean for everyone involved, not just for herself and Ethan. The turning point came during a conversation with James, their accountant with cerebral palsy. When Clara asked how he would feel about potentially working within a larger corporate structure, his answer surprised her. "I came to Second Bloom because you see me, not my condition. Would that change if we merged with Winnecombe? I would do everything in my power to make sure it didn't, but you wouldn't have complete control anymore, would you?" The question lingered with Clara long after the conversation ended. Control, that was the heart of it. Second Bloom was more than a business. It was a vision, a community, a family. Merging with Winnecombe would mean sharing control of that vision with people who might not fully understand or value it. When she finally called Margaret back, her decision was clear. "I'm flattered by the interest, but Second Bloom is going to remain independent. The board will be disappointed." They were quite excited about the possibilities. "I'm excited about our possibilities too, just on our own terms." After hanging up, Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The decision felt right, aligned with who she was now and what she valued. When she told Ethan that evening, his smile confirmed it. "You know, when I first met you, I never would have guessed you'd turn down Winnecombe for a small operation like ours." Clara laughed, the sound bright in their kitchen. "When you first met me, I was so lost I couldn't see past my own pain. You helped me find something worth fighting for." The next morning, as they arrived at the workshop together, Clara paused to look at the sign Sophie had painted, still hanging proudly near the entrance. "This is our new home." Simple words from a child that had become their guiding star. "We made the right choice, didn't we?" she asked Ethan as they prepared to start the day. He looked around at the business they'd built together, at the lives they'd touched, at the woman who had become his partner in every sense of the word. "The best choice I've ever made was walking into that cafe 2 years ago. Everything good has followed from that moment." Clara reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Everything good is still to come." 3 years had passed since Second Bloom first opened its doors. What began as a desperate new start had grown into a thriving business with 35 employees, a manufacturing facility, and retail partnerships across the country. Their furniture appeared in hospitals, schools, rehabilitation centers, and thousands of homes. Each piece still carried their distinctive philosophy: accessibility without compromise, beauty without apology, function with dignity. The original sign painted by Sophie still hung in their main showroom, its childish letters a reminder of humbler beginnings. "This is our new home." Sophie herself had grown too, now 11 years old, her artistic talents blossoming under Clara's guidance. The gap where her front tooth had been was filled now, but her smile remained just as bright, just as contagious. Clara sat at her desk, opening the day's mail. Among the invoices and business correspondence was an elegant cream envelope bearing the logo of the National Association of Accessible Design. Her fingers trembled slightly as she broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. Second Bloom had been nominated for Humanitarian Business of the Year, and she was invited to speak at their annual conference in Chicago. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over," she whispered, staring at the embossed letterhead. And now this. Ethan, reviewing production schedules at the desk opposite hers, looked up. Seeing the letter in her hands, he crossed the office and read over her shoulder, his arm wrapping around her. You earned it. Every bit. The conference was the most prestigious gathering in their industry, a 3-day event featuring innovators and leaders from around the world. Clara's nomination placed Second Bloom among companies many times their size, with resources they could only dream of. The recognition felt surreal after years of fighting for legitimacy in a competitive market. Later that evening, as Clara prepared dinner, a skill she'd insisted on mastering, despite the challenges of cooking from a wheelchair, she raised a question that had been on her mind since receiving the invitation. Do you think I should prepare to stand for my speech? She gestured toward her walking frame that leaned against the wall. I've been practicing. Since the accident, Clara had regained limited mobility through intensive therapy. She couldn't walk unaided, but with her frame, she could stand and take short, labored steps. Each movement represented hours of painful rehabilitation, stubborn determination, fighting against medical predictions. Ethan considered her question carefully. He'd learned early in their relationship not to make such decisions for her, not to assume what she wanted or needed. That's your choice. But either way, you'll be the most compelling person in that room. She smiled, appreciating his answer. Neither dismissive encouragement nor protective caution, just honest support. The morning before they were set to leave for Chicago, Clara checked the conference program online. Her heart stuttered when she saw the name Lucas Brennan, CEO of Brennan Design Group, speaking on luxury and accessibility, the future market. His company had grown substantially, absorbing smaller competitors and positioning itself as the high-end option in accessible design. And according to the schedule, he would speak just before Clara. Ethan noticed her expression change as she stared at the screen. What is it? Lucas is speaking at the conference right before me. Does that change anything? Clara considered the question, remembering their last encounter 2 years ago at a regional design showcase. His condescension, his assumption that Second Bloom wouldn't last, his dismissal of Ethan. The memory still stung. No, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about seeing him again. Ethan moved behind her strong hands, gently massaging her shoulders. You're not the same person he knew, and neither is he, probably. That's what worries me. The drive to Chicago was filled with Sophie's excited chatter about her first trip to the big city. Clara had arranged for her to stay with Maria during the actual conference sessions, but the rest of the time would be family adventure. As they checked into the hotel, Clara noticed several industry acquaintances in the lobby nodding in recognition. She was no longer an outsider, but a respected figure in the field she had helped transform. The first day of the conference passed in a blur of networking panel discussions and touring the exhibition hall. Second Bloom had a modest but eye-catching booth displaying their innovative designs. Clara found herself approached repeatedly by occupational therapists and hospital administrators looking for solutions that combined practicality with aesthetic appeal. By evening, she was exhausted but exhilarated, her business card supply depleted. It wasn't until the second day that she saw Lucas. He stood across the hotel restaurant at breakfast, holding court among admirers. His suit was impeccable as always, his posture confident to the point of arrogance. When he spotted Clara, he excused himself from his group and approached their table. Ethan straightened his hand, moving protectively to Clara's shoulder. Clara, it's been a while. Lucas's voice carried the practiced charm of a career networker. And Ethan, isn't it? His eyes flicked briefly to Sophie, who was watching him with undisguised curiosity. And this must be your daughter. She's Ethan's daughter, Clara corrected gently. Sophie, this is Mr. Brennan. He and I used to work in the same industry. Sophie tilted her head, studying Lucas with the frank assessment only children can manage. You're the man who made Miss Clara sad. Lucas's smile faltered momentarily, his perfect composure cracking before he recovered. Sometimes adults have complicated relationships, young lady, but that's all in the past now. He turned his attention back to Clara. Congratulations on your nomination. It's well-deserved. Thank you. Yours too. A slightly awkward pause followed, years of history compressed into a moment of silence. I hear you might be standing for your speech tomorrow. Quite the achievement given your condition. The words were complimentary, but something in his tone set Clara's teeth on edge, the subtle emphasis on condition, as if her disability defined her. I haven't decided yet, but thank you for your concern. Lucas nodded, glancing at his watch. Well, I should get back. My panel starts in 20 minutes. Perhaps we could catch up properly later, without the family entourage. I'm afraid we're quite busy, but I'll see you at the awards ceremony, I'm sure. After he walked away, Sophie wrinkled her nose. He smells like too much cologne. Ethan chuckled, the tension broken by his daughter's candor. That's one way to put it. Clara remained quiet, turning her coffee cup slowly between her palms. Lucas's presence had stirred something in her, not longing or regret, but a strange sense of disconnect. He belonged to a different chapter of her life, one that now felt like it had happened to someone else. The day passed quickly with more sessions and meetings. By evening, Clara was preparing for her speech, reviewing her notes in their hotel room, while Ethan took Sophie swimming. The words blurred before her eyes, fatigue competing with anxiety. Tomorrow she would present Second Bloom's philosophy to her peers, her competitors, and her former fiancé. The thought was terrifying, yet oddly liberating. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Assuming Ethan had forgotten his key, she called out, "It's open!" The door swung wide to reveal Lucas alone and slightly less polished than he'd been that morning. His tie was loosened, his expression less certain. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. The front desk gave me your room number." Clara wheeled back from the desk, creating distance between them. "What can I do for you, Lucas?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to speak with you. Privately, about tomorrow." "What about tomorrow?" "My company is expanding. We're moving into international markets, opening design centers in London, Tokyo, Singapore." He moved further into the room, his eyes never leaving her face. "The board has approved an acquisition fund. We're looking for companies that complement our vision." Clara's pulse quickened, understanding dawning. "And you want Second Bloom?" "It makes sense, Clara. You focus on mid-range accessibility, we handle the luxury market. Together we cover the entire spectrum." She shook her head, a humorless laugh escaping. "Mid-range. That's how you see what we do. Making accessibility affordable isn't mid-range, Lucas. It's the entire point." He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Oh, always the idealist. Fine, keep your mission, keep your branding, but with our resources you could reach 10 times the customers. Make a real difference." "I am making a real difference. One person at a time." Lucas moved closer, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "This isn't just about business. It's about us, Clara. We were good together once, the best, before the accident changed everything." "The accident didn't change everything. It just revealed what was already there. Or wasn't." His jaw tightened, a flash of the old anger surfacing. "I made mistakes. I admit that. But I've changed." Clara studied him, looking for evidence of this change. His expensive suit, his calculated approach, his assumption that she would welcome him back into her life professionally or personally with open arms. Nothing had changed except his strategy. "No, Lucas, you haven't changed. You've just found a new angle." The door opened behind them. Ethan and Sophie returned from the pool, Sophie's wet hair dripping on the carpet. Ethan froze at the threshold, assessing the situation with wary eyes. "Everything okay here?" Lucas straightened, composing his features into a neutral expression. "Just a friendly business discussion between old colleagues. Nothing to worry about." Sophie darted past him to Clara's side, oblivious to the tension. "We did cannonballs. I made the biggest splash." Clara smiled at her, grateful for the interruption. "That's wonderful, sweetie. Why don't you go change into dry clothes?" As Sophie disappeared into the bathroom, Lucas moved toward the door. "Think about my offer, Clara. It's the logical next step for both of us." After he left, Ethan closed the door firmly, his expression questioning. "What was that about?" Clara wheeled to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline glittering against the night sky. "He wants to acquire Second Bloom, and possibly me along with it." Ethan's reflection appeared in the glass beside hers, his face troubled. "And what do you want?" "Oh, and..." She turned to face him directly, her decision already made. "I want to stand tomorrow, in every sense of the word." The morning of the awards ceremony dawned clear and bright. Clara woke early, her mind already racing with thoughts of the day ahead. She slipped quietly from bed, careful not to wake Ethan, and wheeled herself to the bathroom. Her support frame waited there, a constant companion in her journey toward greater mobility. Gripping the handles, she pulled herself upright, feeling the familiar strain in her arms and the unsteady wobble in her legs. 3 years of therapy had given her this much the ability to stand to take short steps with support. Not independence, not yet, but progress. Hard won inch by inch. Today she would use this ability, not because she needed to prove anything to Lucas or anyone else, but because she wanted to claim this moment fully. Her way. When Ethan woke an hour later, he found her already dressed in her chosen outfit, a deep blue dress that complemented her eyes professional, but not severe. Her hair was arranged in an elegant updo, and she'd applied makeup with a careful hand. You look ready to conquer the world. Just a small corner of it. She smiled, the nervousness evident despite her composure. Will you help me practice one more time? He stood behind her as she rose from the wheelchair, his hands hovering near, but not touching, respecting her need to do this herself. She took 6 steps across the hotel room, turned with painstaking care, and returned to her starting point. Each movement was deliberate, requiring intense concentration and strength. Perfect, Ethan whispered, his eyes bright with pride. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation as attendees filed in for the awards ceremony. Second Bloom's team occupied a row near the front, Maria and James having flown in for the occasion. Sophie sat between them wearing her best dress and the silver bracelet Clara had given her. Hope begins small. Lucas's speech came first, his voice confident as he described Brennan Design Group's vision for the future of accessible luxury. His presentation was polished, his slides impeccable, his message calculated to impress. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, particularly when he announced a new foundation to support design education for students with disabilities. A peace offering, Clara thought, recognizing the gesture for what it was, Lucas attempting to position himself as a humanitarian before the award announcement. Clever but transparent. When it was her turn, Clara wheeled to the side of the stage where a ramp provided access. The moderator introduced her as Clara Wynn, CEO and co-founder of Second Bloom, nominee for Humanitarian Business of the Year. The applause was warm, encouraging. Instead of immediately moving to the podium, Clara paused at the edge of the stage. She locked the brakes on her wheelchair, reached for her support frame that Ethan had placed nearby, and slowly, deliberately pulled herself to standing. A hush fell over the audience as they realized what was happening. Clara gripped the frame tightly, took one careful step forward, then another. Each movement was a victory against gravity, against limitation, against expectation. The silence deepened, punctuated only by the soft tap of her frame on the stage floor. When she reached the podium, Clara adjusted the microphone downward to accommodate her slightly bent posture. She looked out at the sea of faces, some moved, some surprised, all attentive. In the front row, Ethan and Sophie watched with unabashed tears in their eyes. Several rows back, Lucas sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. Clara's voice was steady despite her physical effort. I thought losing my mobility meant losing everything that mattered, my career, my independence, my future. But I was wrong. She paused, gathering strength for both her body and her words. What I've learned through Second Bloom is that we don't overcome our challenges by denying them or hiding them. We overcome them by embracing them, by allowing them to reshape us into something new, something stronger. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on her every word. This award isn't for me. It's for every person who's ever been told they can't, for every father working 2 jobs to make his kids smile, for every child who loves without conditions, for everyone who chooses to stay when leaving would be easier. Her eyes found Ethan's, holding his gaze for a moment of shared understanding. This is for people who stand again in whatever way they can. The standing ovation began before she'd finished speaking, a wave of approval and respect that washed over the stage. Clara gripped the podium, overwhelmed by the response and the physical toll of standing for so long. As the applause continued, Ethan moved quickly to her side, not to help her, but to stand beside her in her moment of triumph. When the awards were announced, Second Bloom won Humanitarian Business of the Year. The recognition felt like validation, not just of their business model, but of their entire philosophy. That different didn't mean less. That broken didn't mean finished. That small could grow into something extraordinary. Backstage, Clara finally allowed herself to sink back into her wheelchair, her body trembling from exertion. You stood, Ethan whispered, kneeling beside her. I did. She smiled through her exhaustion. But I'm absolutely spent. Carry me. He lifted her easily, cradling her against his chest as he had done so many times before. The difference now was that it was her choice, not her only option, but her preference in this moment of shared victory. "I love you," she whispered against his neck. "I love you too." Sophie appeared rushing toward them with the award clutched in her hands. "You won, and you stood up." Everyone was crying. Clara laughed, reaching out to touch Sophie's cheek. "Were you crying too?" "Only happy tears." Sophie's expression turned serious beyond her years. "Does this mean you're better now?" Clara exchanged a glance with Ethan, both understanding the deeper question. "I'm different now, sweetheart. Not better or worse, just different. And that's okay." Sophie nodded, accepting this answer with the straightforward wisdom of children. As they made their way through backstage, Lucas appeared, his congratulations seemingly sincere despite his own loss. "That was impressive, Clara, truly. Thank you. My offer still stands. Think about it." Clara looked up at him from Ethan's arms, feeling strangely peaceful. "I have thought about it. The answer is no." Lucas frowned, genuinely puzzled. "I don't understand. With our resources, you could be exactly who I was before the accident, but that's not who I am anymore." Her words hung between them, a gentle but firm closure to possibilities he still imagined existed. "Goodbye, Lucas. I wish you well." As he walked away, Clara felt the last tendrils of her old life finally release their hold. The woman who had once organized her existence around achievement, appearance, and approval no longer existed. In her place was someone stronger, more authentic, more at peace with the imperfection. The hotel suite erupted in celebration when they returned. The entire Second Bloom team had gathered, champagne flowing, congratulations exchanged. In the midst of the festivities, Clara found a quiet moment with Ethan on the balcony, the Chicago night spread before them in a tapestry of lights. "What are you thinking?" he asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "That I never expected any of this. That sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best things in your life." He nodded, understanding completely. "When Sarah died, I thought that was the end of happiness for me. I was just going through the motions for Sophie's sake. Then I met you. And I thought losing my legs meant losing everything that mattered. Then I met you and Sophie." They stood together, Ethan on his feet, Clara in her wheelchair, looking out at the city below, their hands intertwined. The party continued inside, voices and laughter spilling through the open doorway. Their family, biological chosen, created, celebrating not just an award, but a journey. The next morning, Clara woke to find Ethan already up, sitting at the desk in their hotel room, turning a small box over and over in his hands. When he noticed her watching, he came to sit on the edge of the bed, his expression a mixture of nervousness and certainty. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. I think this is it." He opened the box to reveal a ring, simple but elegant, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "Clara Wynne, will you marry me?" She looked at the ring, then at his face, the kind eyes that had seen her, really seen her from the very first moment in that cafe. "On one condition," she answered, her voice soft with emotion. "Anything. That we do this as equals, not as caretaker and dependent, not as savior and saved, but as two people who choose each other every day, no matter what." Ethan nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "That's the only way I want it." "Then yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they sealed the promise with a kiss, tender, certain, full of shared history and future possibilities. When Sophie woke and heard the news, her excitement was boundless. "Finally, now we can be a real family." Clara laughed, pulling her into a hug. "We already were, sweetheart. This just makes it official." The flight home was filled with wedding plans and excited phone calls. Sophie wanted to be flower girl and ring bearer simultaneously. Maria insisted on handling all the visual elements. James offered his brother's orchard as a venue. The Second Bloom family embraced the news with characteristic enthusiasm and support. But amidst the celebration, Clara felt a need to resolve one last piece of her past. The day after they returned home, she asked Ethan to take her to visit Sarah's grave. It was something she'd wanted to do for a long time, but had hesitated, uncertain of her place in this most private aspect of Ethan and Sophie's life. The cemetery was peaceful under a canopy of oak trees, dappled sunlight playing across well-tended grounds. Ethan led the way to a simple headstone bearing Sarah's name, dates, and the words "beloved wife and mother." Fresh flowers indicated that he and Sophie visited regularly, maintaining this connection to their past. Clara wheeled herself forward, stopping beside the grave. She had brought her own small bouquet, not to compete with Ethan's more elaborate arrangement, but to acknowledge her own relationship to the woman who had come before her. "Hello, Sarah," she said softly. "I'm Clara. I wanted to come here and I'm not sure exactly. Thank you, I suppose, for the family you created, for the love you gave them that taught them how to love again." Ethan stood a few steps back, giving her this moment, his own eyes fixed on the headstone that marked the end of his first chapter and the beginning of the long, dark middle that had eventually led to Clara. "I promised to take care of them," Clara continued, "not to replace you, no one could, but to honor what you began, to love them with everything I have." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead, sending patterns of light and shadow dancing across the grave. Clara felt no supernatural presence, no dramatic sign, just the quiet certainty that this was right, acknowledging the past while embracing the future. "She's part of our story too," Clara said as they drove home. "I wanted to include her." Ethan reached across to squeeze her hand, his eyes still on the road. "She would have liked you, your determination, your heart." 2 years after the accident, Sophie had asked if they could put a photo of her mother in the living room of their new home. Clara had not only agreed, but had helped Sophie create a beautiful memorial corner with several photos, Sarah's favorite books, and small mementos. It wasn't hidden away like a secret, nor was it a shrine to the past. It was simply an acknowledgement that love didn't end with death, it transformed. The wedding took place 6 months later in James's brother's apple orchard. The trees were heavy with fruit, the September air crisp and clear. Clara chose to use her wheelchair for the ceremony, saving her strength for one special moment she had planned with her physical therapist's help. Guests gathered on white chairs arranged in a semicircle, a mixture of Second Bloom employees, clients who had become friends and family, including Patricia and Robert, who had gradually come to accept and even embrace Clara's place in their lives. The orchard provided natural decorations supplemented by simple arrangements of wildflowers and trailing ivy. Sophie led the procession, scattering petals from a basket while simultaneously balancing the rings on a small pillow, a dual role she had insisted upon. She wore a dress the color of apple blossoms and the silver bracelet that had become her treasure. Behind her came Clara, wheeled by Maria, who then took her place as maid of honor. Ethan waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving Clara as she approached. He wore a simple suit, a blue tie matching her dress, his face alight with happiness. The years of grief hadn't disappeared. They had integrated into something new, a deeper capacity for joy, precisely because he understood its fragility. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, their vows personal and honest. When it came time for the exchange of rings, Clara signaled to James, who brought forward her support frame. With practiced movements, she lifted herself from the wheelchair. A murmur rippled through the guests as she stood holding the frame steady. She had been practicing this moment for months, determined to stand eye to eye with Ethan as they completed their vows. Clara, take you, Ethan," she began, her voice strong despite the physical effort. "Not because you saved me, but because you saw me when I couldn't see myself. Not because you fixed me, but because you showed me I was never broken. I promise to choose you every day and in every way for as long as we both shall live." Ethan's voice shook slightly as he responded with his own vows. Ethan, take you, Clara. Not to replace what I lost, but to build something new. Not because you healed my pain, but because you showed me how to live with it and still find joy. I promise to stand beside you, whether you're walking, wheeling, or dancing, for as long as we both shall live. The kiss that sealed their vows was met with applause and cheers, Sophie bouncing excitedly at the edge of the altar. As they turned to face their guests as a married couple, Clara caught sight of Patricia, wiping away tears of James and Maria, exchanging emotional glances of the Second Bloom team, celebrating this culmination of a journey they had all witnessed. The reception was held in the orchard's renovated barn, accessible pathways, ensuring everyone could navigate comfortably. Tables were arranged around a dance floor, lights strung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the celebration. After dinner, Clara surprised Ethan with another moment she'd been practicing. Their first dance. With the support of her frame and with movements carefully choreographed within her abilities, she and Ethan swayed together on the dance floor. It wasn't the waltz they might have all shared in another life. but it was uniquely theirs, a dance that acknowledged limitation while refusing to be defined by it. Later, as evening deepened and guests began to depart, Claire and Ethan found a quiet moment alone on the barn's covered porch. The orchard stretched before them, trees silhouetted against the darkening sky, the sounds of the remaining celebration, a gentle backdrop to their conversation. Happy, Ethan asked, his arm around her shoulders as she sat beside him on a wooden bench. More than I ever thought possible. She leaned into him, her new wedding ring catching the light from the barn. When I had my accident, the doctors told me what I'd lost, what I'd never do again. No one told me what I might find instead. He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair, mingled with apple blossoms. That's the thing about breaking, isn't it? Sometimes it's the only way to discover what's on the other side. She nodded, watching as Sophie emerged from the barn to chase fireflies across the lawn, her dress glowing in the twilight, her laughter carrying on the evening air. From the broken places, light gets in. They sat together in comfortable silence, husband and wife, watching their daughter, for Sophie was truly theirs now, in heart, if not in biology, dance among the fireflies. The future stretched before them, not without challenges, but rich with possibility, with love, with the family they had found and built together. Second Bloom had grown from a desperate new beginning into a thriving business, from a small workshop into a company changing lives across the country. But its greatest achievement wasn't measured in sales or awards. It was measured in the three people who had found each other through brokenness and built something beautiful from the pieces.